Beyond Banks, Rethinking Payroll for a Digital Workforce. I'm Carol McKinley. I'm the CHRO of a company called Pebl. We actually rebranded last week. For the last 12 years, we've been known as Velocity Global, and we're really the original employer of record company. So we can help you employ around the world if you can't, if you're in places that you can't actually employ people. And I'm also on the board of directors of a company called Exodus, which is a digital wallet company. And so I am crypto. I've been at Binance US too, as are some of the folks in the room. So that is the focus of this, is where do we go with payment strategy for the future? I'm excited to introduce some of my favorite people here. We actually had a nice lunch just before this, and they truly are some good friends. But we want to talk about what the future of payroll will look like. So work is no longer where it's just where your employees are, or whether they're an employee or a contractor or a gig worker. It's now about how they get paid, and we're seeing that through our business very loudly and regularly. So we wanted to bring this to everybody here. So payroll flexibility is kind of the crux here of making sure that people are paid in the ways that they want to get paid. And we see the future coming in pretty quickly here. In a recent study that we did, and Pebl did a survey, we found that 1 in 5 employers are now finding that their employees are asking if they can get paid in a different way than just fiat. And so the shift is starting to happen. So the winners of this new reality will be the employers that can actually get ahead of this. And we think there's some pretty easy methods to do that. So we're not going to go into a big black hole of scariness. We're going to actually talk about some viable methods that already exist. So our panelists are bringing the perspectives from finance, from legal, from crypto, from HR, and also from kind of the investment community as far as what's driving the demand here. So we encourage you to think about this as the panelists talk today. So introducing people here on the stage. So on the far right here, or my right, yes. Chase Garrity, VP of People for Binance US, which is the US arm of the largest crypto exchange in the world, Binance.com. Chase has also headed HR for Blue Bottle Coffee, with a stop at the Lending Club and Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And he has helped operationalize crypto payroll at Binance US and has seen firsthand the impact on what they can have on employee engagement, retention, and morale. Chris Lalonde is the Chief Legal Officer at One Money. This is the world's first stablecoin payments network, which we can go into in detail here. It's fascinating what they're doing. He was formerly with the legal teams at OKX, Circle, and with many years of experience in banking. So on top of that, with his legal expertise, he really understands how payments and crypto are impacting the world, but also has a great perspective on kind of where regulation and legislation may lead us. And finally, James Loftus is my peer and the CFO at Pebl. He has a great perspective, given that not only is he looking at our complicated payrolls where we're paying people in over 180 countries right now, he's also been the managing director of PayPal Ventures. So he comes to us with the perspective of an investor in the payments ecosystem. So with that, we're going to start to ask some questions of the panel. So let's start with Chase. Chase, you've run a Bitcoin payroll. Is it hard to do, and what's the value of doing this for the employees?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, that coming through. Thanks, Carol. Appreciate it, and thanks to the Pebl team, and thanks all of you for coming. This is a great showing, and to me, this is a signal, this level of interest, right? Like, when I think about crypto payroll, I think of it being equal parts sort of a technical challenge as well as a change management challenge. From the technical side, it's not just working with Treasury, sending money out. There is a clearing operation that must take place, whether you do it in-house or perhaps you do it with a partner, say One Money, for example. And so thinking about how these pieces come together really necessitates you being strategic about who you work with to make this a reality. From change management perspective, it's really interesting, right? It's what coins do you offer, right? Or what assets do you provide? How often do you allow folks to change their deductions? Things like this, right? What's nice and hopefully brings comfort to this room is that you're really a master of your own domain when it comes to that level of complexity, right? You can control a lot of these things and keep it really simple. And then in terms of employee engagement, right? I work at a crypto organization. It's very enthusiastic, right? So we have a ton of interest. But for the average sort of company, you got to think about what is the value proposition, Because to me, from what I've seen, this is more than just some nice to have. This is more than just some toy which you roll out from a crypto programming perspective. Think of a stable coin, right, is the best sort of value proposition I can highlight, right? When we started crypto payroll at Binance US, what we found was it was much easier to send money sooner to individuals, right? These USD stablecoins pegged to the US dollar, you get equivalents to them faster, sometimes 2 days or more before payroll is actually hitting bank accounts, right? So think of your early career folks, your lower earners, where that 1 to 2 days makes a massive difference in their day-to-day lives, right? Beyond that, when you send a stable coin in many wallets in which these can be stored, the yields on them are wildly better than your average checking account. Where you're making some basis points off of your standard checking account, you can make 4.5% on a stable coin sitting in your wallet in crypto, right? So when we made the connection that, hey, this is actually a better way to create accessibility, right, and allow folks to do more with their money sooner, that was the big connection for us to really roll this out. And it was a wild success internally. Hopefully that answers your question.
You did. That was great. So now turning to James. So at Pebl, you obviously are heavily involved in the treasury, the payroll, and the things we're doing there. Are you seeing a need for alternative methods of payment? And are people getting paid into digital wallets right now? Is that happening through the Pebl service that we offer?
So to answer, there we go. To answer your first question, or to answer your second question, yes, there is demand for being paid into digital wallets. It's a feature that we've been exploring for a while that we can do. I think we can do a better job as we add more to it. I think from what I look at it from my standpoint, there's a couple of key points on the treasury side, but also on the Pebl go-to-market side, which is we need to be able to meet employees and employers where they want to be. I think that's the key thing. We can't dictate to them what we can do. That's not, when someone works, they expect to get paid, and I think they have an expectation to get paid in the way and format that they want to. And that universe of what that used to be, if you were talking 15 years ago, was in a bank account. And then we shifted to direct deposit, where it was a check, and it shifted to direct deposit. And now I think what it's shifted is to different forms of value holding, whether that's a bank account or a wallet. And so to me, this all fits together in, do we pay into a crypto wallet? Do we pay into something like PayPal or Venmo? Do we pay into a bank account? The answer has to be yes to all of those things. As the CFO, when I think about treasury, one of the key things for me is I'm beholden to the existing banking system in 180 countries on how I move money to those employees. And so what I'm always looking for is the flexibility to be able to move funds from our bank account into our supported employees' bank, so employees' store of value. I want to keep using bank account in an efficient and quite frankly cheap way. So speed, cost are all things that are basically created by the banking system so that they can get paid for it. So I'm always looking for things to solve that. Also, we have multiple cross-border issues that I think come up with that I think digital assets provide a lot of solution to it. The one challenge that's always come with digital treasury is if you're not a crypto company. If you are a crypto company, your board, your shareholders expect you to be holding digital assets as part of your treasury function. My board is not expecting that at Pebl. They didn't invest in a crypto company, they invested in a HRTech company. And so I can't tell them, I was holding 10% of our treasury in ETH and it went down 15% today. So what I'm looking for is a digital asset that provides me with the stability I expect from a bank account, or the yield I would expect from a treasury bill or money market account. And I think that what we've seen over the last couple of years is a robust development of stablecoins that start to give us that. They give us a yield return on holding it. They give us the speed and ease of digital assets, but they also take us out of the speculative up and down that came with the first generation of digital assets for use in treasury.
That's a great segue into Chris. So Chris, you've been working in the crypto industry and in the banking industry for quite a while. One Money is doing something that is now kind of novel, and I think you see not only the payroll challenge as a subset of a much greater challenge out there in the world. Why don't you describe what you're doing and what challenges you're trying to address?
Thanks very much, Carol, and thanks everybody for being here and being curious about stablecoins. Maybe I'll start with the second question first. In taking a step back, fundamentally, the problem that we're trying to solve, it kind of was James just hit on, and that's really disrupting how we interact on a global basis in the payments world by disrupting a broken legacy financial system, disrupting the banking system, which bleeds into payroll. So in doing so, and in adopting stablecoins, we're not only democratizing access to US dollars and other local currencies in a more instantaneous manner, but we're also directly addressing the problem of financial inclusion, which also provides for a better employee experience to people that are receiving payroll from their employers in a globally distributed workforce. So in terms of what we at One Money are doing, we're doing a couple of things. So one, we are building the technology that enables companies across every sector you could possibly imagine, including payroll processors, to very easily and in an ultra low cost and ultra fast manner onboard fiat currency such as US dollars into stable coins, which as the name implies is a non-speculative stable digital asset pegged to a US dollar or another foreign currency. To convert the fiat into stable coins, use the rails or the technology or infrastructure to, in a matter of subseconds, transmit those dollars to anybody with a smartphone around the world without using banking rails. And so what that does is it essentially gives you an opportunity to programmatically accelerate the time in which you actually make a payment, a payout, or pay your employees or gig workers or contractors. So that's one of the things that we're building in terms of a platform that allows companies a full end-to-end solution for payments and payouts. The other thing that we're building is the actual infrastructure on which those transactions move. So we're actually building the network itself that supports the ability of companies, large and small, and individuals on a peer-to-peer basis to transact instantaneously using a smartphone without any reliance on banking rails.
So Chase, I'm going to ask you a super simple question. If tomorrow I wanted to get paid in crypto, even though I'm not sure if you're running a crypto payroll right now, what would be the method to do that?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with getting the right partner, right? And there's a lot of new players. It's a very exciting time, right, in this space. What I will say is when you're considering the right partner, right, whether it's through an EOR service, rail service, choosing the right stablecoin, et cetera, it really comes down to who has survived some of these very scary crypto winters, right? It's easy to raise, it's easy to launch a company that's sort of in this upswing, but who's weathered that storm, right? Because they're going to be in the trenches with you to help get this thing launched, right? In terms of getting the process set up, it took us some time because we built it from the ground up, but with the right partner, you can actually get this stood up quite quickly. But find someone you can trust, find one who's been there before, right? And ultimately, it'll be second nature in no time.
So James, as I'm going to have you put your investor hat on for the minute. As a company who is paying in crypto and intends to continue there, do you think that the investment community looks to that as a positive? If a company can say that they're actually accessing novel ways of making payments, and not just payroll, but as you go into the payments area, if they're actually vaulting forward and using new technologies to pay people, is that seen as a positive?
I think, I'm not sure investors would think about that directly, but I think indirectly it would have an important impact because to me, it's about attracting and retaining talent, which is, at the end of the day, especially in the technology industry, you are an aggregation of people. Like there's no thing. We're not building factories. We're not making cars, right? And so at the end of the day, you're putting together, and what you're investing in as an investor is a group of people who are building something together. And for me, there's been very little innovation over the last 20 years in how we add to the tools that we give HR professionals to do that attraction and retention. If you think about it, the way we've been paying people in Silicon Valley hasn't changed very much since 1999. And so to me, like this is where you can fundamentally change the talent you can access and how excited they are to work for you by providing them with, like I said, by meeting them exactly where they want to be. And so in a way, it almost doesn't matter whether only 10% of your employees want this. If those 10% of employees are happier or attracted to your company or more retained, then that's really valuable. And as an investor, that's what you're looking for, right? I mean, if you look in the AI community right now, the amount of movement that's happening around, like people jumping back and forth, like between companies, at the end of the day, that's really damaging to what the investor is invested in if key talent is leaving. So I think the more that a company is thoughtful about how they're approaching every aspect of how they interact with their talent, like the better.
I'm going to ask a corollary to that before you turn your mic off. Do you think, I'm sure this is HRTech, so I'm sure we have folks in the audience that are thinking about their own products and their engineering teams and what they're building for the future. What would be your advice to folks in that area as far as thinking about crypto? And to that point, you know, I've been long enough in this industry, I've seen people, you know, high five because they got the pound sign into an HRIS, right? Yay, I can denominate in the local currency. What would be your advice, you know, as people are looking to get funding and get ready for the future there?
So we were joking at lunch because I have been in fintech in one way or another for almost 15 years, and I've been deeply involved in digital assets and crypto and have been a skeptic most of the time. But there's a thing I've always been more skeptical of, and that's the long-term nature of the existing sort of bank-run money movement system, because it's intentionally creates friction in order to create value for the banks, and so, or for MasterCard and Visa, or like there's a bunch of these incumbents. My advice to folks would be is, because of stablecoins and the adoption that's happening and the functionality that's being built and things like One Money, like I have never been more confident that within sort of a medium term, I don't know what that means, I'm not going to lock myself into a year, but like we're going to see fundamental changes in how money moves around the world. So that's both within countries like the US, but also between countries. So I feel like if you're building a product, if you're doing payroll, if you're in HR and you're paying people, like you need to understand how this works, because I think it's going to become standard much more quickly than people think, because there's so much margin built into these systems, into banking, into wire systems, into ACH, into MasterCard and Visa, that if we build a working mass adopted system that's much cheaper and much faster, they're not very good. Like this is the reality is, especially in the US, like our money movement systems are quite bad. We're one of the only major countries that doesn't have a mostly free, instant money moving system. We have this system called FedNow. I'll try not to get too fintech geeky with everyone, but like there's a system called FedNow. Like it exists. Like you can move money for free. You don't have to wait 3 days to move money between banks like you do in ACH. None of the banks are adopting it because they like ACH. Like they want to create friction in the system. And to me, like that just shows that the incumbents are setting themselves up to be disrupted. And that, by the way, doesn't even capture the cross-border. I mean, at Pebl, we do so much cross-border. We move $1 billion of payroll a year, and all of it is cross-border. That system, there's so many middlemen in that system that can be disaggregated from that middleman nature by both new stablecoins, but also new companies that are building the rails that stablecoins can move on. So I really think this part of digital assets, even if you don't want to understand like L1s and ETH and Bitcoin, like you need to understand stablecoins and how they work and what companies like One Money are doing to move money. Because I really do think we're going to see it become a much bigger part of the everyday movement of money. And it, by the way, it could be mostly back office. Like the end users, like employees, might never see it, but it's still going to be a really important part of what it does. So I think it's not niche sort of digital asset kind of thing anymore. Like this is going to be mainstream very quickly.
Well, that's